What is up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Hands Athletics Radio. So today we are diving into a sensitive topic that we put out a statement on a little bit ago that was a little bit misunderstood. So today's podcast is to talk about essentially CrossFit and what we truly think about it in the opinion of our coaches and in our organization, as well as having a guest on that also has similar opinions. But we're going to kind of brainstorm and talk about what CrossFit is to us, what our statement meant, and maybe where it was a little misunderstood, and the benefits of CrossFit, as well as where we see some gaps in the mindset and the approach that we were talking about. So I'm going to invite Colby on at this time and have him introduce himself. And I hope you guys enjoy this episode and are able to gather some information out of it and maybe understand a little bit better what our opinion truly is on it. So what we'll have, Colby, you've been on here before, but I'm going to have you jump on real quick and introduce yourself, and then I'll kind of let the audience know what we're going to talk about today. And spoiler alert, it's going to be about that post we put up concerning CrossFit. So go ahead.
Sure. So Colby Wortman up in North Dakota, one of the owners of the Iron Chapel strength and conditioning gym, very traditional. And then I'm able to do some contract work with division or NAI school and do football, basketball, volleyball, all that stuff. So been in the realm for a little bit, and glad we can jump on the podcast again, man.
Yeah. So to catch people up that are watching this and maybe didn't see it, I threw up a small snippet, just a 15-letter word image on my Instagram story concerning CrossFit and high school athletes. And it stirred up some emotions, some people, and in their defense, I kind of threw that out from a situation going on that I'm just aware of that kind of got me upset, and I threw that out there and didn't put a lot of background into it, why I said what I said, and really just sounded kind of dogmatic, which I want to stay away from. With what we know and how we coach, we know there's not one way to skin a cat. So today I wanted to have you on because you reshared it, because I think we have a similar view on, what CrossFit is and what it is to us and whatnot. So I wanted to kind of dive deeper into that. And then first off, just kind of apologize to those people or those that were offended that I didn't put more effort into sharing why I shared on my page. Right. So that's kind of the point of this, is to share exactly what I was trying to say and what it meant, and not so much what they got from it. And I had some people in the community think that I was lashing out directly at their gyms, which wasn't the case. So first off, the situation that we can kind of dive into this first. The situation that kind of sparked me to post that was there are some youth athlete type of settings that are going on that they are running CrossFit workouts, which necessarily is not CrossFit's fault, right? But there's not any certified coaches on staff, and the coaches are working out with 30 to 40 athletes at a time doing CrossFit workouts. So first off, I think people would agree, most people would agree, I starkly stand by the fact that if you are working out with the kids, you are not coaching them. So
I completely agree with that. In my preface for it too, and I think you came to this same conclusion after the whole fire back, was you're going to get a different experience at each CrossFit gym that you go to. Affiliate or not, you're going to get a different experience. People learn differently, so that means they're going to coach differently. And I think that I came to that realization after posting it as well, from the lashback that I got. So on my end as well, I want to preface that I'm not 100% trying to burn this down, and it's something that we're just coming to a conclusion and trying to gain a perspective of the people that are doing it right, and highlighting the people that maybe aren't doing it right, and help maybe get them to a different standpoint.
Yeah, 100%. So I also wanted to preface this conversation with what I believe CrossFit to be, right? Because like you said, coming from my perspective, I did my L1 back in like 2011, 10, something like that. And what I know is kind of the early, I guess that's earlier, still earlier CrossFit. It's later, but I had dove into CrossFit.com, the journal, the website, read about CrossFit, understood it. And the way I understand CrossFit is I agree with a lot of the things. So you have the functional fitness, you have intensity. I mean, obviously intensity is often misused and that needs to be built up to. But essentially what I was taught was, it advocates kind of a broad, general, and inclusive style of fitness. So basically not specializing. So CrossFit's meant to kind of expose people that are specialists, right? They say our specialty is not, literally this is on their website, our specialty is not specializing. Combat, survival, many sports in life reward this kind of fitness, and then on average punish a specialist. So we can kind of dive into that. I mean, because the post itself was concerning athletes, right? It wasn't saying fitness is, or CrossFit's not good in general. It was saying, CrossFit is not ideal for high school athletes or youth athletes. So,
and that going on that, it's talking about originally, I believe it was called like the Hopper method, and just trying to get on being a jack of all trades. So we're not going to be the master of anything, but we're going to be the jack of all trades, and that's what the whole sport itself consists on. It's going to expose you on anything that you have not spent time on. And so what I talked about is in sports, we have a very specific demand. And if all strength coaches should have the said principle drive everything they do. And so in that method of CrossFit, building a huge engine and being a jack of all trades is not bad for general population. General population, CrossFit has done the most amazing job at putting a barbell back into people's hands, getting some strength, and building a community. And so, but if we're looking from the athletic side, it's a very specific demand, and we want a very specific result. And so building a massive engine and just being decent at all these things is not going to do anything for us in the athletic realm. Are we gonna be in a decent shape? Yes, but that's going to burn out. And so that's kind of where I thought about it, exactly what you just talked about on that basis, was building a huge engine and being decent at everything isn't athletic performance.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of, I think the biggest separation from what we believe would be probably like general adaptation wise for youth athletes. I think in our opinion, or in my opinion, strength is a higher priority for me, especially in a youth athlete in the beginning development over work capacity. So the ability for an athlete to build strength in many different ways, neuromuscular, coordination, just general strength, tensile strength, the ability to control like their own body weight and then a barbell and then progress that linearly in a linear fashion. Like that is more important than generally developing an athlete that can just work more. Mm-hmm. So weigh in on that, on what you believe with that.
I mean, and both of our experience gets back to posture and position, being able to hold an external load, have enough tensile strength, and have a base level of strength that we're able to complete the task. And so different, and this gets back to the different experiences at different gyms. A lot of gyms that I've been to on that CrossFit side, it doesn't matter where you begin, you're going to get thrown into a Metcon or whatever it is, and we're trying to build work capacity. I couldn't agree more that I would say a good majority of younger and even high school athletes that have zero experience in the strength and conditioning realm, strength holds its weight a lot more than work capacity. We can building work capacity is actually fairly easy. To actually build long-term strength that is going to hold out throughout your athletic career, quick to ripen, quick to rot. You know what I mean? It takes a long time to build that strength. And so putting that as a cornerstone of the program is much more important to me than work capacity.
Yeah. And I mean, a good example of that in my mind is, how many athletes do we see that are semi-professional, professional level, that have that background, have trained for athletics, have built that base level of strength, spent the time doing that, and then they transition over to CrossFit? There's a lot of examples of successful CrossFit athletes that already had that base level of strength. Like, let's just do an easy one to pick, and that's Matt Frazier. Spent a lot of time Olympic weightlifting, like a majority of his life, just Olympic weightlifting, right? So he's got a very strong base. He has great technique. He spent a lot of time under load, and then he transitions into building that work capacity side. But he already has that strength, and then he just excels and shines. But I haven't seen somebody that trained specifically for CrossFit. And in their defense, I don't know if we've had a generation yet that's, I mean, we have probably 20, 21-year-olds now that have been doing it for a long time, but I haven't seen a lot of them successfully transition into professional sports, or like a good example of that, so.
That's, I mean, that's very important to look at too, because in the athletic realm, I think you're getting different prerequisite skill development that is above and beyond of what you're going to be using in CrossFit. And that goes to show, and I like that you preface it, that there isn't that generation yet that possibly could go into professional sports. But if you start on the athletic realm, a lot of the stuff that you're doing on the competitive floor is open loop. And you're going to have that aspect going into CrossFit, which then is going to help you excel quicker and above most other people. And that gets us to, and I had some people talk about it, because their only experiences with CrossFit. You and I have had experience with CrossFit and the strength and conditioning realm, college athletics, whatever it is. And I always preface this statement with, there's a reason why the professional athletes and the strength and conditioning coaches do not allow or do not adopt CrossFit methodology into their training. And it seems crazy, but not long ago, the New Orleans Saints adopted CrossFit early on, and it didn't last long. They kicked it out because the work capacity, the people could not stand it. And that's where I look at it. If this was truly meant for athletes to do all the time, I would believe that the knowledge base of these professional strength and conditioning coaches would adopt it. And so that gives us a good perspective of showing athletes are able to make that transition really well. CrossFitters have a tough time getting into that transition because they don't have the prerequisite skill development to do it.
Yeah. So I think that leads us directly, like, we can jump into this real quick. You kind of highlighted the SAID principle before, and let's kind of build upon that in terms of, what we're talking about. And that is, I can't say the word, specific adaptation to impose demand. So what we're looking at is reverse engineering the demands of sport very specifically, and saying, okay, this is what you need. And it could be even position based within one sport. So these are the type of adaptations that we need for not only your sport, but for you individually, to make you the best athlete you're going to be, or the most capable to perform on the field. There's nothing random, or there's nothing important about being generally spread out across all different realms. It's more about how can we make you excel directly and specifically in what you are asked to do on the field, which I want to jump into this idea and put it out there. We'll talk about it in a little bit, but we're not saying that this is the most healthy way to train. We're not saying it. There are benefits to being spread out across all of that when it comes to your health and wellness and just being generally in shape, right? But athletics and being extreme in a sport kind of takes you on that health continuum away from healthy back towards what you would say sick is, right? So you have unhealthy, you have, I got to go this way, healthy, and then you come around, and I think you have athletics. So like high level athletes aren't necessarily the most healthy people at the end of the day, because the demands of their sport ask them to do things that aren't necessarily healthy. And I also believe that for CrossFit Games athletes, like, I don't think what they're doing is the healthiest for their body as well. So
No, not even close. And then look on the whole other side of the spectrum. And I mentioned this in my video. CrossFit has built these machine-like people. I mean, when Rich Froning was running train on everybody, you looked at him and it's like, my gosh, dude. And then the owner of Chalk, I forget his name, Chalk Performance. He was
I forget
Ryan,
his name too. He's jacked though. He's like
Ryan,
he's a savage.
Ryan Fisher.
Yeah.
So they built these amazing physiques, but that doesn't make you an athlete. And so it makes you an athlete within your sport. If your sport is moving and functional fitness, great. But then on the whole other side of the spectrum, let's look at the best throwers in the entire world. Those guys aren't 100% healthy. And that's what we got to look at is we're talking straight athletic development. And we want to make it known that you can actually moderate it to be a general population person and this be very healthy. And then talking about the SAID principle is I have my athletes, and some of them actually do call me out on this, and I'm glad they do, is I tell them at the start, if you're a long-term client, if you're a long-term athlete, I've had you since you're a freshman or 8th grader, if you look at our programming throughout the day, or if we're in a session and you're like, why in the hell am I doing this type of movement? I want you to ask me, and I should, as a coach, be able to tell you and reverse engineer why we're doing it. There's nothing random. And that's the point. That's what's one of the big points that we're trying to get out is there's nothing random in what we're doing. We make sure that there's a specific result we want. So we need to specifically demand of that body to get that result. And that's what drives everything we do. And so I have those athletes that actually call it out, and even just say the execution and the setup of a step up. And they're like, well, I can easily do this way better if I just load up my quad and just pounce myself up there. Well, that's not what we're trying to get out of it. And so looking at that, reverse engineering the SAID principle will allow you to show your athletes exactly why you're doing things.
Yeah, and I like how you brought that up, because I just wrote an article on that in terms of like not bashing coaches, but saying like if you can't explain why you're doing something, or at least have like even in CrossFit realm, like you need to have done everything that you're asking someone to do, in my opinion, so you understand what you're driving and what's happening and what the experience is going to be like. Yeah, so I agree. Like if people ask me why we're doing a movement, I have an explanation for them. So I think that's really important, even to push yourself as a coach, is like, why are we doing this? Well, I can tell you exactly why. And then you dove into the next aspect that's huge for us, and that's specificity. So how are we performing the movement? So it goes beyond like even the movements we're asking them to do, the rep schemes, why we're doing, like we also look at it and say, hey, this is why we ask you to perform it this way. And that's because this is what's going to carry over on the field, right? I don't care, for a majority of my clients or all my athletes, depending on their sport, like I don't care if they can lift more weight or do whatever more comfortably in different positions. So a good example is like toes forward. So it's been awesome because I just grabbed a true form treadmill, and now all my high school kids that I've been saying, we do our lunge a specific way, we do our step up a specific way. Guess what? That treadmill, if they're not running in that exact way that we've been working on, dude, that thing spits them out so quick. And then I'm like, look, this is the connection. So this is why we have you do it this way, so that when you get out and you're running, you're actually producing power and you're fast and you're able to change direction. And this is the reason I ask you to do it this way. But also, it's not dogmatic. It's like if I have an Olympic weightlifter, because that's a background of mine too, I'm not going to ask them to squat toes forward, because at the end of the day, their sport, if I had a CrossFit, I coach CrossFitters, guess what? I don't make them squat toes forward, because their sport, right? It demands that they get to a certain depth. There's requirements of their movement. So based on their body, like, yeah, I would love for them all to be toes forward, but if they can't do it and they're going to get no reps at a competition, we're going to squat with their toes out, because that carries over to their sport. That's specific. Olympic weightlifters, same thing. You got to catch 300 pounds above your head in a full squat. Odds are your toes are going to be pointing out,
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of ways to look at it, but I think it's important that people understand we're looking at it at a level that it's like we are specifically doing a movements in a way that will carry over to whatever your sport is.
Yeah. And in Olympic weightlifting, in CrossFit, whatever it is, it's that position for them is going to be just very specifically for them is going to be more advantageous. But if we're talking about producing power and change of direction and first step quickness, toes forward is going to be more advantageous. And so that gets us to why we even the setup, the execution of everything we do. But why do we have them squat toes forward, trying to grip the ground, externally rotate? And why do we do that? Well, that's going to carry over because we have to have enough tensile strength. We have to have enough and good posture and position to carry over to our lunge, to carry over to our step up, but more importantly, carry over to our plyometrics and our sprints. And that true form, I had my own freaking experience with those true forms. When I went to the symposium, we had air runners, we had the assault air runners, we had Cybex ones, everything that it's a ball bearing and it's very curved. So if you go forward, it's going to haul ass. And so I get on this true form and my first rep was shit. Couldn't get anywhere, because the hamstrings weren't pulling the ground back. I wasn't landing how I should. My gait was off. And that truly teaches you why do we squat? And that's what and some of those kids, and I don't think we need to get them to the point where they understand it, but a lot of those kids are chasing the numbers. Well, we need to get this on the squat because the coach is pushing them to that. Well, we're squatting this way so that you can run and sprint this way and hold a posture and position on an external load this way. So that's what we're trying to get out there, that in CrossFit, you are squatting to squat. You are practicing squatting to get better at squatting. And we're not trying to do that. If it's a byproduct that they get linearly a higher number, awesome, because they're getting a better posture and position, they're getting a lot stronger. But we're not doing it for that. We could care less about that number. It's about, and John Welborn makes a very good point. He's like, what's the difference between 100% and 105%? And he's like, that 5% crumbles people because you don't have the prerequisite strength and you don't have the prerequisite to hold the posture and position to do that. And so that is the biggest thing that I see out of it. We're not just squatting to squat. And that brings us back to that point of the set principle.
Yeah. So I think sometimes people just have, that don't have our background or just aren't in the same realm, have a hard time understanding that that's where we're coming from sometimes. Like when I say, CrossFit's not the best for high school athletes, it's so much deeper than just like what the methodology of CrossFit is. It's like, how's the coaching? What is it applied to? I mean, I've never heard this type of conversation go on inside of most CrossFits. I'm sure it happens, and I'm sure there are CrossFit coaches and there are CrossFit gyms and owners that are on this same page. Well, I know for a fact there are, because they're in the same networks that I am in. But when I speak of CrossFit, it's impossible for me to speak for all CrossFit gyms. When I speak for my understanding of CrossFit HQ and CrossFit.com, because that's the company, right? It seems to me that everyone has, like, swinging back to the beginning, all these gyms are just affiliated under CrossFit, but they're all their own thing. They're all their own experience. They're all their own coaching. No, they're not all programming the same. There was no guidance from CrossFit on you have to do this, 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 and this. It was, you got your certification, open up. It's going to become whatever you want it to become, which is awesome, right? There's great things that come from that, and there's horrible things that come from that. So when I speak of CrossFit, I don't speak of, I'm not trying to smush everybody into that category, right? I'm just speaking about, CrossFit as a company, and who knows, maybe in 6 months, they're going to come out and make some moves on improving some of these areas, because now they're in a pivotal time of change with what's going on. They got a new owner, who knows? But at the time, that's kind of where that statement came from. And I think that swings in. Let's talk a little bit about, for those that do like let's talk about some of the benefits of CrossFit I guess, and the positive things from it. And I'll kind of kick it off with, I spent my first 4 years of kind of training seriously after high school and college. Like I did CrossFit. So I did it every day, went for it, did competitions, coached it. That's how I got into coaching. At the very beginning, when I first went to college, I found this whole CrossFit gym that I wanted to start coaching at in conjunction with what I was doing at school. And I would show up I was like, can I coach? And because I was into it, he's like, sure, show up at 5 a.m. and start shadowing me. And for 6 months, I shadowed him. And then all of a sudden, I was running some of the college classes that were coming down to the gym itself. So my first experience and ability to start coaching and kind of led me to where I am now actually became because of CrossFit. So I guess we could dive it first into the opportunities CrossFit have shown us and whatnot, and just the general public. So go ahead and weigh in on that.
I touched on it a little bit ago. I think, and you made a really good point about the transition from CrossFit to athlete and athlete to CrossFit. CrossFit has done it better than any other company. You look at these big time, this name escapes me, but the new generation of these fitness companies, and they're like the big time cycling classes and all that stuff. But CrossFit has done it better than anybody else. They've built a team, and they've built a brother and sisterhood, and they've built this hierarchy of people, and it's a really cool family, and a lot of people outside of the CrossFit realm strive to have their gym so together and so coherent around one task that they're modeling after that. And so I think CrossFit has done some amazing things on that end. And another thing is they've brought, and a lot of people talk about this, John talks about it, I've talked about it, but back in the 90s and the 80s and everything, is you had to go to the very dirtiest underground gyms to train with a barbell effectively and get strong. And I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is Westside Barbell, this grungy basement that you had to go to train with a barbell effectively. And because all it was Gold's Gym, all this stuff. And so now CrossFit did a great job at bringing the barbell back into everybody's hands and getting everybody effective at a lot of the barbell lifts, and even outside of the barbell, just building that team and having one common goal is a really cool aspect that I find of CrossFit. And so getting back to it, a lot of my experience with CrossFit early on was one of the biggest CrossFit gyms in Wyoming, CrossFit 307 out of Casper, Wyoming. And then my sister opening up one. And the cool thing that I've seen is, so my sister out of Buffalo, Wyoming, she was a part of and coached at this CrossFit gym this guy owned, and he just almost ran it into the ground. And people were just not liking it. The equipment was failing, maintenance wasn't done. And they gave him an ultimatum, like, everybody, all your people are not happy, we're going to buy this from you. And so she bought the gym, has never been affiliated with it, but she's grown it into something very cool. And that gets us to the point of, you're going to get a different experience everywhere. And so at her place, you're getting a decent experience. And I wish that we could even go further with that. And that's what I've been trying to instill, a little bit of my strength and conditioning background for people that don't, I explained it last time, but I have an exercise science degree. I'm a certified strength and conditioning specialist, and I'm striving to get into the Block 1 community. And so getting that background of 4 years of a degree in just exercise science, the CSCS, which is a very incomplete test, but having that block 1 background, the power athlete background, that's what I want to help instill on that. Because if they catch on to that, it's going to spread like wildfire, because they have a mind at her gym that is actually very advanced and advantageous for athletes, but they're still under that CrossFit methodology realm. So being able to spread the good word of getting that to people, so that they can kind of see that light too, of why we do things, and it's very specific to what we want.
Yeah, and I mean, we have this basically the same background, so I think that's where we have such a similar mission. But I think like final statement for me is definitely, I mean, CrossFit, if you have an athlete that's not doing anything and an athlete that's doing CrossFit, it's better. 100% it's better than just sitting around or not using a barbell, going to Gold's Gym. Like it is better than that. So, I got that statement I made. It's better than that, but we just want to help spread the word about how much there is beyond what CrossFit teaches, and what's available to all these people that are coaching in CrossFit gyms and own CrossFit gyms. They have all the equipment they need. They have athletes. They have people. Like there's just, if they dive a little bit deeper, I just feel like there's so much more benefit for them and their business in terms of being able to service athletes even better. And also like there's definitely the opportunity to have both programs running in your gym, CrossFit and an athlete specific program. You're going to have coaches, obviously, that are probably very focused in on, meeting the demands of the athletes because they are not easy to always work with, but there's just an opportunity for more. And that's kind of where that statement came from. And I definitely spit it out of frustration. But I think this will help people kind of dial into it. But any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And when my background too in high school, and it gets to the point of talking about if you're doing nothing or CrossFit, I'm going to take that CrossFit athlete 10 out of 10 times. In my high school career early on, because my hometown was so dang small and they didn't have a CrossFit gym. It was that they'd never even heard of that. And so doing strictly bodybuilding and single joint exercises and just trying to put on as much muscle as possible, I could have been a better athlete doing CrossFit. And that's what I want people to get is we are not totally against it. I could, if genetically, if my body would have been able to withstand injury, I would have been a superior athlete if I would have had that background, because when I got to college, my cleans weren't where they needed to be. X, Y, and Z. I wasn't where I needed to be. And luckily, I was able to just work hard and still start all 4 years. But that's what I want people to hold on to is I am not trying to burn it down, and I know you're not either. And so we want to put out there that dig a little deeper, and you're going to find that there's a lot of other things that could possibly help your athletes. Because in what I do and what you do, I almost feel like it's a never-ending cycle that we're trying to strive to get this accelerated adaptation for these kids and do everything we can. And that's what they need to hold on to is look further, research deeper, look at different places so you can get these different experiences. Because you, even more than I, had much more CrossFit experience than me. And now you're to a point that you've gone along this spectrum that you can see and adopt. You've adopted stuff from CrossFit. You've put it into what you're doing, but you're on the spectrum that you can see the other end of the tunnel because you've had that experience. And so take the good things and make your philosophy principle based, and that will help guide you. Let the said principle guide it, and you're gonna be fine. So that's kind of where I wanted to finish too, is that we're both for CrossFit, and in some way or another, we just know that there's something more.
Yeah, 100%. Where can people connect with you if they kind of like, that conversation we're talking about today and your ideas on that? Where can they, jump on and connect with you? And I'll link it to the show notes.
So the Iron Chapel is the gym that I own in North Dakota. We do, just like you do, we do online programming for people that are not up in North Dakota. We strength and conditioning facilities, so you can find us on Iron Chapel on Facebook, Iron Chapel on Instagram, or my specific business under that would be Next Level Training or Coach Wortman on Instagram. So Coach_Wortman on Instagram, or the Iron Chapel will do it, man.
Okay. Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you hopping on today. Hopefully that kind of, I'll put this up on the podcast, leave it on the video, put it on YouTube, but hopefully this kind of gives people a better insight into what I was trying to say, and what, obviously that you shared the message as well and have the same ideas. But hopefully this is a little more beneficial and a little more insightful into what we're actually thinking about it and how we're approaching it and whatnot. So
Yes,
thanks,
sir.
man.
Yeah, appreciate it.